don't lose sight of the fact that this is still underwriting. At the end of the day, you have to have an underwriting profit because all the data and the technology is helpful, and that's an enhancer, an enabler, but we are underwriters at the end of the day.
Emily, I'm going to start with you, because obviously you've been in the news recently, or Gallagher's been in the news recently with Evolve. Why did you set up Gallagher Evolve? What was behind it?
Gallagher Evolve, for those that aren't aware, is a follow capacity facility we've developed exclusively for Gallagher Group clients. We wanted our clients to also be able to access some of the benefits of broker facilities that are well understood, access to Lloyd's capacity that wasn't available on an individual risk basis, replace capacity once the facility parameters are met, and then over time, hopefully greater certainty of capacity during fluctuating market cycles. And then we wanted to use that as a platform for growth. So that was the backdrop to us setting it up.
Brilliant. And you must have learned some stuff from the kind of, in inverted commas, first movers. What did you learn from
We did, and we wanted to make sure that we tried to take as many lessons from the first movers, because we were very much not first movers in that space. And I think the first wave broker facilities were largely a sort of manual risk review and acceptance process. There's obvious limitations there for efficiency and scalability. But over the last few years since then, the sophistication of the potential operating models has hugely increased. The emergence of rhythmic matching technology has meant that not only is trading with such a facility more efficient today, but it can scale with greater ease. And it's also able to relatively quickly adapt and flex as the portfolio market landscape itself starts to shift. So we wanted to make sure that we'd taken all that into account and had a future-proof model, basically. And I think the other aspect of it was the data, the buzzword. But I think a portfolio facility with a fairly wide scope is a hugely rich source of information, and we wanted to make sure that we were utilising all the tools available to collect that data at source, to structure it and enrich it so that we could use that to innovate further for our clients.
Brilliant, thank you. So going from a second mover to a first mover, well, you must, if you were to start again, you'd probably do some things differently. What would you do differently?
Yeah, often had this conversation. So I'll try and answer that from the perspective of both a carrier, but a broker. So if I think back 8 years to when we first started this, data quality was mixed, to be polite. I can remember one time a broker saying, we don't have data, but we'll put 5 people in a room. We'll print off every single market reform contract we have, and they can try and decipher those and tell you what we have. We had a few false starts where people didn't quite understand what was required, and the facilities didn't survive. We had initially manual underwriting parameters and lots of people trying to interpret those and have conversations internally with brokers and try and educate the brokers and their clients. And unfortunately, that led to quite a lot of anti-selection, misinterpretation, probably some overcomplicated rules, and frankly, too many people, and it was all too manual. But I will credit the early adopters because they proved the concept. They have built scale, which is essential for this, worked through a number of complex regulatory issues that we now understand much better, and they provided a product that enabled those of us who do fast follow, smart follow, enhanced, whatever we're calling it, to exist. You then jump forward to the second mover, and this is where Emily's point's valid. The data requirements today are much better understood, and the data is more consistent, and we've started to see some minimum standards arrive, which is really helpful. There is more expertise and there's more experience in the space, so some people have learned the hard way. And if you were starting a new team up, you could go and find people in the market that know what they're talking about, and that was much more difficult 8 years ago. The main thing, I think, is digitization of slips. So if you're a broker and you're operating on a single platform and you now have a fully digitized slip and you can actually extract all the information, it's fantastically valuable because it means that you can automate your matching and your in-scoping, your binding process. And you can also, the back end of it, provide really great reporting, which is almost as valuable as the front end to the carriers. Underwriting appetite can be dynamic. You can change it if you want to, and you can get sort of real information, which is great if you want to make changes. So a huge amount of benefits are now available to those starting new. And there are many, I think, brokers and carriers that have been looking from the outside in and letting some people make some errors. But now I think is a really good time because we've all got much more experience.
So one of the key questions people ask themselves is whether they build or buy. We do a lot of work in this space. It's never an easy decision to make, partly because the world evolves incredibly rapidly and the decision would have been the right answer 5 years ago now changes as the technology evolve and suppliers arrive, come and go. Why do you think, and obviously you're biased in this question, but why do you think partnering is the best way of progressing?
Yeah, I think it's about focusing on competitive advantage. It's what you know in business. It doesn't really matter actually what line of business. It could be completely outside the insurance market, but focusing on what you want to be really good at. What are you going to really excel at? And so, I think for most brokers, that's focusing on the client. How are you going to give the client the best service and the best offering? For insurers, it's how do you assemble the best portfolio of risk and construct that portfolio manager across the cycle. And for us at InsurX, we're building technology. We want to be the best at building that exchange technology that links brokers and carriers together. And it's really difficult if you're a broker to have those kind of two purposes to try and build, that amazing technology and also service your clients well. So by working out what you want to do really well and partnering with someone who has a shared ambition, a shared vision of where we're going, and I think that's what we found when in our partnership with Emily and the team at Gallagher, is that shared vision of where we believe the market's going to go. They've got an amazing broking platform, a worldwide broking platform that was crying out for the technology that we had. And we found a partnership model that we could serve that up and we could both focus on what we're both going to excel at.
Sean, I'm going to come to you. I mean, we've talked about the technology and we've learned a bit about past and history. One thing that Will said was around data. So it's obviously a key part of these propositions. What is the value of data in these? And
just on something Will said, I do think one of the we're sort of relatively new in the portfolio solution space in AXA XL. But we were sort of part of it nearly 10 years ago. And I do think, the data, it doesn't, at the moment, it's not like night and day. It's not that dissimilar to where it was then. But I do think one of the things that, things like InsurX and these digital facilities is really driving is a much more concerted effort to standardise the submission, digitise slips in a way that I don't think was there before the digital facilities came along. So having to make decisions on submissions in a codified way, I think is going to drive benefits across all the underwriting models lead. I think to go back to the question about growth, I think real-time data, if facilities can get there, I think the need to in the algorithmic facilities to have data to actually make changes outside of that sort of annual review process, I think then will give much more certainty around the exposures you're writing, and I think that will encourage people to be more ready to grow in these areas, right? So wherever there's uncertainty, you build in margins. Wherever there's remediation, that really slows down growth plans. So I think we're sort of very optimistic that all these initiatives are going to really drive better data, not just within the facilities but across the whole market.
Great. Will, do you see the same things?
Yeah, I think we're very excited about the opportunity to interpret and understand our data better, and already having early conversations around AI and how we can use it. Now, it needs to be structured, and that's taking some time. But when we get there, it'll help us decide who the right leaders are, which industry segments we should and shouldn't be writing, which territories are better for this or that. So there's huge value to us down the line if we can actually get the data structured. I do agree that it's not perfect at all yet, and it's still inconsistent between different organizations, but it's definitely getting better, and there's an opportunity for us there.
Brilliant. I'm glad you said AI. For those of you who've got your bingo cards, buzzword bingo cards, please do cross AI off.
Thank you.
Gilbert, just on that, I'm sure there's AI in your platform somewhere. So talk to me a bit about how you're thinking about using that type of technology.
Yeah, I suppose I see it as it's a sort of arms race for data, and I think it probably comes in two parts for this particular part of the kind of the industry. It's how do you structure it, as Will said. How do you take unstructured data and structure it? There's loads of data, it's just not structured, so you can't actually then turn that into insight. And I think that's the critical part. It's not just having the kind of chest full of data. You've got to be able to have it structured, and then you've got to be able to understand it and query it and turn that into insight. And that insight is then what allows you to take that action and to either decide, do I want to write that portfolio? Do I need to change how we're constructing this portfolio? Or I've got a bunch of clients. How should I best serve them? Who are the best markets to take that to? So I think it's about using the new AI tools that are coming out, which are going to be very, very powerful, and we're already doing that within our platform, turning that unstructured data into structured data, and then turning that into the insights that allow you to make real decisions.
Great, thank you. Well, I just want to think about the benefits for a bit. What are the benefits, and who gets the benefits?
Well, that's a difficult one because at the moment, if you look at the individual stakeholders, so do clients get the benefit? Well, we're starting to see some form of client discounts and client dividends emerge, and that's a good thing because it will make them more inclined to use the facilities, and it can be anything, consortia or otherwise. The brokers, from their perspective, see benefits in the form of fees, which go up. They get the speed of transaction, certainty around the placement, and in some cases, we're starting to see long-term commitments being requested. But for the carriers, we get immediate access to large amounts of business, and we can be efficient in that point of view. But, and here's the big but, we still have not recognized those efficiencies yet, to the point where fees are dropping and the market's expense ratio is reducing. And as we go through this next part of the market cycle, this is our great opportunity to do that. And I do recognize that you have to invest early and it's expensive. But in the medium term, we really need to see efficiencies recognized and see the cost of it all come down, and then we'll all benefit. And ultimately, it should go back. You can see Gilbert about to say the same thing. It should go back to the clients ultimately. Because
no, I think I agree with everything there. I think there's one big point I would add, which is flexibility. And I think that's really powerful for the carriers. Traditionally, as the kind of market's softened and you're in a soft part of the market, it's actually really difficult to stop underwriting. You've got a whole load of underwriting costs. You need to maintain it. This new model has a lot lower fixed underwriting costs. And so it allows, with that data, for you to make those decisions. Now, whether you do make the right decisions, I think that will play out. And I think that's why I believe this technology is not good or bad. It's how you use it. You'll still have to do great underwriting, but it does give you that tool to go, you know what? This class is now not technically adequate. I'm coming out of it. And you can make that decision without having that cost space that's always toying with, should you make that decision or not?
I mean, we're seeing that in a lot of our conversations around giving people optionality on classes of business. Emily, so we talked a lot about tech and we talked a lot about data. That can't be the only capabilities that you need to be successful. What other capabilities do you need to be successful?
I mean, how a broker would define successful and how a carrier would define successful are probably slightly different. I think...
I will come to Sean next.
Hopefully we're quite aligned. But, how we would see ourselves as being successful in the space would be having a long-term sustainable solution so that we can realise some of those longer-term benefits for our clients. How do we get to a long-term sustainable solution that is putting appropriate controls around what we're trying to do and having that buy-in to the strategy really throughout the organisation? So it's all very well putting a broker facility in place just because everyone else has got one and we think we need one, but how do we ensure buy-in from the top down? How do we listen and respond to the broker feedback about how it's being used? How do we, articulate to our brokers a coherent placement strategy that involves this facility? I think all of these elements together will give us a portfolio that shows good indexation, which is what our carriers want to see. And that is what will enable us to have a long-term sustainable facility.
Brilliant. And Sean, I queued you up there, so hopefully you had plenty of time. What kind of capabilities are important beyond just tech and data?
I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, you mentioned people that benefit. I mean, there's quite a few actuaries that have benefited from the sort of explosion in portfolio solution jobs. And I think it's actually people. One of the things we're looking at the moment is people, because it turns out even in quite large underwriting organisations, there aren't that many underwriters who spend a lot of time thinking about broad portfolios across lines of business. It tends to be very senior individuals that are actually making those decisions. So one of the things I think we're sort of starting to think about is how do we start identifying those sort of mid-career sort of underwriters who want to sort of take this as a really sort of exciting opportunity going forward.
Yeah, again, the market's quite siloed, isn't it, the way it thinks about these things. So I'm just going to go round one by one and ask you what What is your advice to, let's pick carriers. What is your advice to carriers to be successful in this space? What do they need to do to be successful?
Don't lose sight of the fact that this is still underwriting. At the end of the day, you have to have an underwriting profit from a carrier's perspective through the cycle, and we're about to go into a different part of that cycle, and the proof will be in the pudding if in 8 years' time we continue to be profitable. So that would be my advice. Don't lose sight of that bit, because all the data and the technology is helpful, and that's an enhancer, an enabler, but we are underwriters at the end of the day.
Brilliant. Sean?
I mean, I think we've been doing it for 4 months. I don't know if we can declare a success yet, but you need to be really clear about your ultimate goal and how you want to use these underwriting models to complement your internal, the internal entity. But I think you need to be very flexible on the way to those goals, because it changes so rapidly at the moment.
Again, similar to Sean, we've only recently launched our facility, so I wouldn't want to, opine too much about what makes a success. But just to circle back on what I was saying, I think, we all know that diverse portfolio that is representative of what was originally presented to carriers is what we're trying to achieve here. So I think from my side, we would say manage indexation, and sitting inside the broker, that is effectively our job, to make sure that we're delivering that part of it.
And actually, you're being a little bit humble, because actually people forget that in a broker, you've got one of your biggest clients are the brokers internally, and that you can't just assume that system will work, as we've seen with some others who are no longer in the space. So it's not just a case of getting carriers on board. You have 2 jobs to do.
Yeah, I agree with everything there, but I would probably add culture. I think getting the brokers on board, it's absolutely vital that you get the right culture between senior management, and the right alignment probably of culture between what senior management is really trying to achieve and what the line brokers are also trying to achieve. And often they're incentivized to either serve their clients, or their bonuses are incentivized to behave in a certain way. If you don't get that aligned with what you're also trying to do with this technology, or bringing this new capacity in, it won't work out well. You'll either get, you'll have a misalignment with what the carrier is expected to have, or it just won't be used.
Brilliant. Well, that's it from us. I'd like to thank Gilbert, Emily, Sean and Will. Thank you very much